Growing up, I wasn't what I think anybody would consider a very anxious kid, but I did have my moments. And one of the things that actually was very anxiety-inducing for me, ironically, was this one song I had on a cassette tape. You see, before I would go to bed, I would actually go over to my little boombox that I had, and my parents would let me play one of any number of these different cassette tapes. And some of them were little stories, some of them were little Christian songs. And as I was listening to one of them, I can distinctly remember, even to this day, there was a song, and it went, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself." And this is something many of you may know as a Bible verse, but I can tell you that the style of this song was clearly a bad ripoff of Bob Marley's "Don't Worry, Be Happy." And for whatever reason, there was something about this song that I remember felt very haunting. I didn't appreciate it at all. But that didn't change the fact that the message itself was actually very valid. And actually, because of how weird and uncanny I found this song, I actually caught myself thinking a lot about this Bible verse and going in and reading it. And you guys too, here in your groups in just a minute, will go in and read the Bible verses that this phrase comes from. But one of the things I want you to think about are, what are the things that cause you to worry? Most of the time when we have something we're worrying about, it's because there's some sort of dependency that we feel like we have on the rest of the world. There's either something that we depend on for wealth, there's something we depend on for security, there's something we depend on for approval. And because we fear that we're not going to get those things, we worry about it. It causes a lot of anxiety. We feel like maybe if there's just something that we do, or maybe there's something more that we could do, or maybe we need to keep from doing something and it'll just help us to get that thing. All of this can cause us to worry, but the root of that worry ends up being something that we're trying to get in this world. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to read the verses that this popular Bible phrase comes from, and then as you read those, I want you to ask yourselves this: what are the dependencies that you feel like you have on your life that cause you to worry immensely? And then ask yourself this following very important question: what do you think you're going to accomplish by worrying so much? Topics like worry and anxiety are something that actually can be addressed a lot when we start going into philosophy a little bit. I know that sounds very dry and boring, but just follow with me here for a second. There's a type of philosophy that's actually called Stoicism, and I feel like a lot of what we're reading here in the scriptures start actually tapping in a lot to some of this very Stoic philosophy. And really what it comes down to is just kind of understanding that there is a certain futility or powerlessness that we have over a lot of what's in the world today. And I want you to just think about how freeing that can be. What we just talked about was the fact that a lot of times our worry is based on the idea that we feel like there are certain dependencies we have on the world around us. That I need something from the world or else my life is going to be incomplete. It's not going to be whole. I'm not going to be secure. I'm not going to be comforted. Well, a lot of times if we look at what we can actually accomplish with our worry and with our anxiety, the answer is not a whole lot. By us simply sitting here and staying up at night and losing sleep, it's not going to cause us to get any closer to that goal that we're actually getting after. And at this point in time, we're not even talking about theology. We're just talking about just common sense. Our worry frequently is not going to get us any closer to what it is we want to achieve. Now that becomes even more important when we start thinking about our relationship in Christ, because you see, God has so much more in store for us than just what this world has to offer, and no amount of worry that we're going to have is going to cause us to get any closer to that. You see, God doesn't want us to be so wrapped up and worried about the things in the world around us that we lose sight of what's really truly important. Now, here in a second, you guys are going to read a little bit from one of these Stoic philosophers, but what I want to share with you is maybe a little bit of a different type of philosopher. This is actually a song that comes from somebody that I listened to a whole lot when I was a teenager and in college. His name is John Rubin. He has a lot of good I guess you would call it Christian rap songs, but there's this one verse that he has out of a song called All I Have, and I think it really speaks to this concept of anxiety that the world forces on us, and what really the actual cure is, which is contentment. So just take a moment and just listen to some of these words for a second.
Yeah. We're not taught trial and error, We're not taught nor are we prepared, so we fail against everyday opponents. All the while we're still living for glorious moments, and the media feeds to you the false reality of what it takes to make yourself happy. And since they got about a 1 in a billion shot, why try and make them think it's something that it's not? This ain't a movie, this is real life. The spotlight don't shine quite as bright as some might like, but that's alright, cause the starlight at night is more of a highlight than the high life. The air I consume from the breath of creation renews my soul every day I awaken. Oh man, tell me who knew that simply being content was the dream come true. I'm alright, I'm okay.
I love the way that he talks about that contentment is really the dream come true, because that's really what we're after. The true cure for our worry and our anxiety is understanding that there's a contentment that we get from God and from having this different perspective that God gives us. This is something that in your small groups you'll actually look at an example of. An example of where Paul, who is having to suffer tremendously for his faith, even getting imprisoned and persecuted many times over, finds a level of contentment, not because the world offers it, but because God has opened his eyes to the fact that there is something that is much grander than any earthly dependency he may have. One of those verses there, I feel like, is one of the most misquoted verses in the entire Bible, at least from a casual perspective. It's that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Everyone loves the beginning of that verse, but we conveniently just pass right by the second part. I can do all things through Christ. This isn't a message that's some kind of self-help story or something that's supposed to help motivate us so we can go win a sports game or something like that. This phrase is something that's actually talking about our limitations. I can do all things, but only through Christ. It's through understanding that Christ gives me a different perspective that's bigger and better than what I have here on earth that will allow me to be able to get through whatever I am currently having to endure. You see, here's the deal, and this may be even more anxiety-inducing, so it seems counterproductive, but Christ doesn't assure us that we're going to have a worry-free, anxiety-free life. If anything, he actually kind of says the opposite. He actually explicitly tells his disciples that, look, people are going to reject you. They're going to persecute you. Some of you may even lose your lives because of me. But take heart, because you are going after something that's far more glorious, far more awesome than anything this world could possibly have to offer. And compared to what I have to offer you, all those other earthly dependencies you may have just start fading away into the background. Focus on me, and if you focus on me, you will be able to achieve and endure anything this world throws at you, not because it's going to be easy, but because your eyes are set on a goal that's even greater. Do you happen to know somebody who seems like they just kind of live for their worry? They always seem like they're in a state of constant crisis. Things never really get better, and they almost seem to not really want to work to get out of their current cycle of anxiety. This is a real thing. This is something that really happens, even when we're dealing with people who go through different experiences in their lives or seem like they just kind of have this constant tragedy of a life. Sometimes the reason why it seems that way is because that's what they're latching on to. And if they were going to be honest with themselves and with others, they would probably admit that they kind of enjoy the sympathy. They enjoy this position they have. It's very familiar that they're in this state, and it's kind of sad. Well, a lot of people are exactly in that same place when it comes to their sense of worry, their sense of anxiety that they can't shake. It's become something that they know very well, and so because of that, they don't really want to move on. There's a sense of living for their worldly dependencies, and they've just become accustomed to. And because of that, it can be hard to move past it. But here's where having a Christ-like perspective really starts changing the way we think about things. Because you see, once we start seeing that these worldly dependencies are things that are only temporary at best, then we can start realizing that those things are really kind of futile. I mean, trying to go after, whatever that next big promotion is, trying to go after that sense of approval that other people are going to give us or not give us, trying to be good enough or great enough or pure enough or whatever it is that's keeping us up at night. All of these things are just completely meaningless pursuits, the exact same way that Solomon was talking about in Ecclesiastes as we began this series. What we're after is not these worldly dependencies. What we're after is working through these worldly dependencies towards godly dependencies. A dependency on a God that has already won. A dependency on a God that's already achieved. And a dependency on a God that has already reserved the glory and the treasure for all who follow him. That's what we're after. And so the cure for all these worries that we have, it's not a matter of just simply removing the conditions that are around us or removing the temptations, removing the things that the world's going to try to say, hey, this is good enough, this is going to make you happy. It's understanding that none of those things are going to get you to where you really think you want to be. The true key to contentment is letting go of our worldly dependencies and realigning ourselves towards godly dependencies. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that's never, ever going to let us down, the only thing that's never going to be insufficient, and the only thing that's never going to expire is going to be the blessing that God has promised us and the gift that Jesus Christ has already earned when he died on that cross. That's the perspective that we have, and it should be freeing. It should be something that helps the worry to subside, and that helps us to be able to move past whatever is holding us back. Not because all those things have disappeared from our physical life, but that we're no longer being held back by those things. I'm now able to move forward despite what the world throws at me, because I know that God has something better in store for me. That's our lesson that we have for today. I hope you're able to get something out of it. Until we can meet again, God bless.